Welcome to the Pindown, your Detroit Pistons podcast. I'm your host, Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys.
And I'm Blake Silverman, writer for Detroit Bad Boys, covering everything Pistons, and news writer for Sports Illustrated.
And guys, we are recording here on a Friday evening. So yesterday, the NFL season opened up, and you know what makes me so excited about that? That means that basketball is just around the corner. We're almost back, almost back to real NBA basketball actually being played. As fun as Summer League is, we're really almost back to the real deal. And that's just incredibly exciting.
Oh man, if you tell any NFL super fan that, they'll be like, the NBA doesn't start until Christmas or whatever. But I'm excited football's
Look, everyone
back.
can be wrong.
Yeah.
Everyone can be wrong.
I'm with you. That's how I see it. The NBA season's right around the corner. In a couple fantasy basketball leagues, we're going to get our drafts going soon. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, football's here. It feels like fall in the air. College football's already underway. Had an NFL game Thursday night before we're recording. There's another one tonight. So I'm excited.
Is there actually another one tonight? Are they playing Fridays early in the year now? How did I miss
this? The Chiefs and the Chargers are playing in Brazil.
So
it'll probably start right around the time we're done recording. It's a 8 p.m. Eastern kickoff. So we'll see how that game goes.
All right. Well, there you go, guys. So if you're tuning in live, we're your pregame. All right. If you're watching NFL football tonight, we should wrap up right in time, apparently, for kickoff. So you'll get to talk some Pistons here a little bit. We're going to do some stat predictions and a ceiling and floor for just the core young guys today. So that should be a lot of fun. And then you'll be able to just kind of turn the brain off and watch some football, which I know I always like to do. I like the Lions. I'm obviously a big Lions fan. And what's fun about the Lions is I'm not sitting there with a notepad, right, actually taking notes on the game. So I do really enjoy – I am excited for the Lions to go kick the pants of the Packers here on Sunday. But I'm more excited to watch Cade Cunningham play basketball again in just a month now. I think it's just a month. Me
too, yeah. And good luck to our guy, Bryce, whose Chiefs are playing tonight. So – yeah, it'll be I feel like the international games with the field and everything is always a little weird, but yeah, training camp for NBA is about to be here, and then we get preseason and regular season. So yeah, football season kind of just happens out of nowhere, I guess. Summer just ends, and then we're almost to basketball. So that's what I'm looking forward to as well.
In this case, summer really did just abruptly end. It's been in the 60s here in Chicago, and I don't know when it's going to get warmer again. I'm hoping at least one more week of reasonable temperatures here before we get to October, but I don't know. There are plenty of people that are just probably excited that spooky season's around the corner, so I can't complain too much. It's okay.
Oh yeah, it's September. It's almost time for the pumpkins to be. I like keeping summer as long as possible, but when the weather feels like this, it's hard not to flip the brain. And yeah, I don't know if it's going to turn around over here too.
Well, guys, we are going to get into some regular season, preseason storylines as we get closer to the preseason, regular season. Okay, so today we really wanted to touch on two topics, and one of the topics actually just branches into 5 specific guys. So we should have a loaded show. Make sure if you're here with us live, go ahead and ask those questions in the chat. We'll try to get to those. Just add in your comments too. So I mentioned that we're going to be doing ceiling and floor stat predictions here for the 5 core young players on the Pistons roster. If you want, go ahead and throw your stat predictions in as well, and we'll put those up on the screen. Okay. But what we wanted to do here first was honestly a surprising conversation, at least to me. I would not have predicted this even after the high note that the Pistons ended last season on. But last week, all of the NBA insiders at ESPN, they did a kind of Eastern Conference standings preview. All right. And they they just did a standings preview, my bad. But in the Eastern Conference, they broke it out by tiers. So you had the contenders, you had let me scroll, apologies, bad podcasting. You had the play-in group, and then you had the bottom 5. All right, so contenders, play-in group, bottom 5. And it's not necessarily, Blake, I think, where those insiders put the Pistons in terms of record that made us want to have this conversation. It was kind of the grouping that they got placed with. So the insiders here at ESPN, they predicted the Pistons to finish with a record of 47-35, which I think both of us would agree that's reasonable, probably on the higher end of at least my personal expectations, but that's reasonable, right? That's okay. It's the fact that the Pistons were listed in the contenders group. And so we got to ask, I mean, are they really, like, are we maybe overrating the compete level of the Pistons right now is, I guess, the question.
Yeah, it's interesting because where the cutoff is. So the Pistons are grouped with the Hawks, the Magic, the Knicks, and the Cavs. I think overall, when you look at the East, that's a pretty good top 5, and I don't hate including the Pistons in that group. And I mean, we think the Magic are going to be good. We think the Hawks are going to be good, but we haven't seen those new look teams and everything on the floor as well. Do I think the Pistons have a realistic shot at contending for the East? Maybe not, but I've always said, even last season, like, what would stop them from making a run in the playoffs if they do end up there again? I think the roster is built to compete at that. I mean, it has to be. And then if you look at the next group, so the play-in tier, it has the Bucks, the Celtics, the Sixers, the Heat, and the Pacers. Again, I think that's about right. And what I think is interesting is if you go to the West, so the East had 5 contenders, the West had 6. So, and that they had 6 teams that they were projecting with 50 or more wins. So maybe they were doing it by like a win-loss threshold. But I think it's interesting that they weren't clearly keeping the tiers to like 5 teams each per tier. They intentionally kept the Pistons in that contenders group. Like, they could have moved them down into the next tier. So I think it does say a bit on what the national media thinks of Detroit and how they're taking their last season. But overall, and there's a little write-up under each one. The Pistons aren't mentioned really at all in that write-up, so we don't have the reasoning behind it. But I think it makes sense, at least. Like, I almost think there should be a second tier, even another tier, like the Cavs and the Knicks in their own, and then the Pistons in their own tier with the Magic, the Hawks, and the Pistons, and call it whatever you want. So I don't think it's totally surprising, but the word contender makes it a little iffy for me.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's the fact that ESPN just threw the Pistons in with the contender. And honestly, I'd be having the same issue with the Hawks and to an extent the Magic as well, even though I 100% buy into what the Magic have set up their roster to be coming into this year. So like, I think I'm with you, actually. The Pistons, to me, are battling the Magic, the Hawks, the Bucks, the Celtics, and the Heat. That's kind of where I'm at. And like, you know, look, the 76ers, if they can stay healthy, they're going to be a formidable opponent. Can they stay healthy? Recently, that answer has been no, and I don't really know if we have a reason to expect that to change. But if they do, then you could throw them into that kind of tier as well. I just really think it's kind of jumping the gun. Like, to even have the conversation or the thought that the Pistons maybe could come out of the East this year, I just think it's a little bit too early. I really like what the Pistons have done this offseason. I like how they responded to the Malik Beasley thing. And I like that they've basically continued to provide runway for guys like Ivy and Holland and Duran and Asar to take steps forwards. It's just a lot of those guys already did take a step forwards last year, and development's not often linear. There's probably going to be some ups and downs. So, you know, Cade, being the stud that he is, raises the floor of the team to basically, in my opinion, where they were last year. I don't think the East is as weak as people being, you know, analysts and just casual water cooler conversations make it out to be. Like, I really just think this is all, it feels a year too early to me, Blake. Is that fair?
I think so. And I think the 47 wins is an interesting number. Like, I think it's a fairly like spot on prediction, almost as close as you can make it. But I wouldn't be shocked if they fall short of that. Like, they were the only team to triple their win total from one year to the other. And that certainly is easier when you win 14 games one year. But it's going to be really hard to increase that win total from last year when you win 44 games, you get into the playoffs outside of the play-in and everything. So I'm with it. Like, I'm not expecting the Pistons to compete for the East this year. I think the goal should be mainly just getting back to where they were in the East playoffs. And that's going to be a challenge in and of itself. Like, Boston might not be as take as much of a fall off as we think. We don't know what's going to happen with Philly. Other teams could surprise you. I really think the goal should be winning a playoff series, and that makes you a contender. That makes you one of the top 4 teams in the East. But I think overall contending to be the East representative in the NBA Finals, I would not put my hat in that ring, I guess.
All right, you know what? This is going to be the spirit of this episode, I think, because we're going to do ceiling and floor for stat predictions for the young players on the Pistons roster. Let's stick with that, though. What would be the Pistons ceiling this year, do you think? Like a reasonable ceiling that they, I mean, obviously an absolute ceiling is winning the NBA championship, and an absolute floor is going 0-82, right? Neither of those are really reasonable, though. So let's keep it within the bounds of things you could expect reasonably could happen at the end of the season. Where is the Pistons ceiling? Where is their floor?
So in terms of wins, just wins, I'd say I personally think their ceiling would be somewhere right around 50 games. And that, like, if you want to jump it up even more to that 55 range, like that's a lot of wins. That would probably give them one of the, probably not the top seed in the East, but right in the conversation for number 2. But 50 wins would probably put them in the conversation for home court advantage in their first round series. I think that's a pretty fair ceiling. And then when you look at floor, I for the 40 wins is sticking out in my mind. That's below 500. I think the team should at least shoot as a reasonable expectation to be right around where they were last year, winning 44 games. Maybe it's 43, 42, whatever. But even if you get down into the 40 range, that's play-in territory, and that's certainly not where the team wants to be. But it's not a crazy take in my opinion, just going from one year to the other when we don't know how this conference is going to play out.
Yeah, I have the exact same ceiling actually as you. I think that the max for this group is a 50-win team, and that would be an incredible victory on its own right. For reference, the Pacers last year were a 50-win team. The Knicks were a 51-win team. All right, so your top 4 seeds in the Eastern Conference last season all were above 50 wins. I mean, we could look at the Celtics as maybe taking a step back, but look, the Magic are going to be tough. They're really going to be tough. I could see them getting up over that 50-win threshold as well. So maybe there's a little bit of more wiggle room now that the Pacers also have that Halliburton, injury to contend with. But I could see as a absolute high end the Pistons getting into that group. On the low end, I was going to go 500, 41 and 41.
Mm-hmm.
And I would hope that that's a play-in team. But again, I think that the East is better than people are going to give it credit for. Like the Pacers, that's a really good, solid squad. They don't have the superstar with Halliburton, but the chemistry in Indiana is through the roof, and I don't think they're just going to bottom out and go nowhere. I think they're still going to be competitive. You can say the same for Boston. They've still got talent on that roster. I actually kind of like what Milwaukee did. It's at least an interesting experiment. We've talked about the Hawks, and they've created a really fun group of young guys there. The Heat, I think, got better. The Raptors got better. I could see the Sixers being fairly good, and Charlotte's got a lot of talent. So we've just listed off quite a few teams, right, that are all going to be competing if things go their way for those play-in spots. I don't think that 37 wins is going to get you a 10 seed anymore, is kind of where I'm going. I could see the floor of the Eastern Conference being a lot higher than what it was last year. And I guess by a lot, I mean like approaching 500. So 40, 41 wins.
Yeah, I think the goal, maybe a floor, even if you take wins and losses out of the equation, is if you are going to be in that play-in territory, sticking in the 7 and 8 range. So it makes it so you only have to win one game to get in a playoff series. You still don't want to be in that realm, because you have to play one of the top 2 seeds, whether it's New York, whether it's Cleveland. We saw them compete with New York in a playoff series. So I don't think if you draw that team or one of the teams in that range, it's a total write the Pistons off in that series by any means. But you'd want to have a good matchup as well. We all like the matchup with the Knicks last year. So if the Pistons could be that 7 team, get a home play-in game, win one game to get in and get that 7 seed, I still think that's a pretty good result. But it's also sort of a floor, which makes it so hard when they overexceeded on expectations so much last year.
All right, so this is a fun comment / question from Pistons fan in our live chat. Says, if a contender is winning a playoff series and the Pistons should have won game 4 versus the Knicks and potentially had a game 7 against the Knicks last season, and the Knicks went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, so were the Pistons a contender last year? And then he wants us to remember they did not have Stewart or Ivy in that series.
Yeah, I think it's hard. Like, I think what we're talking about a little bit is how you define contender. And I think, to me, at least in this top 5 teams in the East context, is like teams that could realistically win the conference and go to the NBA Finals. I don't think the Pistons were in that range last year. But also, if you frame contender a little bit different, like, is it a team who wins a playoff series, who is competitive and should have won one, or makes a run to the Eastern Conference Finals? That's certainly a contender as well, because you were there also. Yeah, again, I just think maybe if we're splitting it out, and if I was doing my own tiers, I'd almost put New York and Cleveland off on their own as NBA Finals contenders, and then maybe another one with the Pistons, Orlando, and the Hawks, and maybe add in Milwaukee there on teams who could at least be competitive and make a run at the East and give New York or Cleveland a scare.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I define contender the same way. So I think that's why both of us, we kind of had an issue with how ESPN set that up. Like, I just don't see a realistic scenario where the Pistons are able to represent the Eastern Conference in the NBA Finals. So to me, they're not a contender in the East, but I think they're a contender to be, winning a playoff series and being competitive in the semifinals round of the Eastern Conference. I think that's well within reach, and that could be a lot of fun. The only thing I would want to add to this conversation, specifically to the question here from Pistons fan, is just, I get it. Like, it is really tempting, I think, to look back at that Knicks series and go, well, if the ball doesn't slip out of Malik Beasley's hands there on that last second shot, or they don't get that really bad call there. And I think it was game 3, right? The first game where it was in the pound, and maybe they don't give up that huge run there where they just collapsed in the fourth quarter in game 1. And you could kind of talk yourself into, if the ball bounces a certain way, the Pistons come out and win that series. And I understand why that's fun and why maybe it would be tempting to go ahead and try to talk yourself into that. But at the same time, the Knicks could do the exact same thing. The Knicks had a couple of things really not go their way. I mean, remember, I think it was it game 2 or was it game 4 where the Knicks just didn't have a dead ball where they couldn't get their starters back in, and Brunson was sitting in
yeah.
the fourth quarter from like minute 8 to minute 2. Like
Yeah.
if there's a single dead ball, that game probably looks a lot differently. And now we're talking about the Pistons only having 1 win in that series, not 2. And you could kind of, same thing with game 2. The Knicks did make a pretty good comeback. You got a couple of big heroic Dennis Schroeder shots. What if those don't go in? Now the Knicks have swept the Pistons. So I think you just take that series for what it was. Extremely entertaining, hard-fought basketball, and a great showing, first playoff showing for these young Pistons. I don't like playing the hypothetical thing. I think you could kind of go down rabbit holes too quickly and forget that the other team could do it too.
Yeah, and I think what Chad is saying here in our chat, and thanks for joining, Chad, is a really good point. Like the Pistons almost beat the Knicks already. The other 2 teams, being the Magic and even the Hawks, haven't proved they can stay healthy and make a run, and even the Knicks as well. Like that's definitely true. I think the East is potentially, all the people that are talking about all the variants that it has with the Halliburton injury, the Tatum injury, Dame got hurt. Now he's not with the Bucks anymore. I think there's more of an opportunity in the East for there to be a surprise, whether it be playoff seeding or a team that's actually competing, than it is the West. Like with the West, we sort of know who the teams that are going to compete for it will be. And overall, I think no team in the East is going to want to see the Pistons in any playoff series, no matter who they are, because I think they can really compete with anyone. It's just, could they string it out over multiple series and eventually get to that point where they are competing for a championship or like a Eastern Conference title and play in the NBA Finals? I think that's just a little too rich for me right now, but it's all on that progression track. I think the team is where we all would have wanted them to be. Just the last year's season kind of breaks my brain a little bit into how to realistically set expectations for this team coming into the new season.
Well, Blake, I can tell you one thing for sure. They cannot triple their win total again. I do know that. That is impossible. And just because it's fun and it's the offseason. They can't even double it. You're right. Dang it. So all of those record books, that's all out. That's all out of the window now. They can't double their record for another year in a row. But that's okay. I want to give the Atlanta Hawks a shout out here, just because we've mentioned a couple times that they're a really solid roster. I just want to read out their top 8 because it's pretty beautiful. Like it just, the puzzle pieces fit so well. So, you guys, you listeners, you should tune into the Atlanta Hawks if you can. They're going to be really fun to watch. But you got Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, Zachary Risache, last year's number 1 overall pick, Jalen Johnson, healthy again. He was a stud before he got hurt last year. And Kristaps Porzingis, that's probably your starting 5. And they're bringing friend of the Pistons, Luke Kennard, off the bench, along with likely Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and then Onyeka Okongwu, who's got versatility to play the 4 and the 5. Great defender, good athlete. Like that top 8 is just really, really solid. If Kristaps can stay healthy, man, I think that they are up there with the Magic and Knicks more so than in that group with the Pistons and Bucks, to me, because that talent's legit.
Yeah, and Jalen Johnson is just on another level.
He feels like a forgotten man, Blake. Like no one's talking about how good he was last year.
He was incredible, and what Dyson Daniels did was awesome. I mean, if I was a award voter, I would have had a really hard time not voting for him for Defensive Player of the Year. He wins Most Improved. But yeah, I really like their core. There's almost not a weak spot, and Risache as well. Like you mentioned him, although it's not the superstar number 1 pick that teams want when they luck into that lottery luck, and especially with Atlanta when you're not supposed to be there and you get it. But Ricochet is almost the perfect player for them when you already have Trae Young. You're to a degree building around Jalen Johnson. Like he's their core player to me. Because Trae, you never know what could happen. He's not seriously, but sort of been floated in trade conversations. But now I think it's in a realm where it is a good core, and what Atlanta's building makes sense. So yeah, they're going to be a really tough team. And the Naw signing got all the main storylines because he was one of the top free agents in this class. But you mentioned Luke Kennard, like that's a great rotation signing to add some spacing. I mean, I think Ricochet is going to be the guy that you want to rely on for that. And hopefully he continues what he's doing and turns into this like knockdown defender. And he's a very low maintenance player. Like you keep him off the ball and he's not taking stuff away from Trae or Jalen Johnson. I just think it's a good roster too. So yeah, them in Orlando. I mean, they were both ranked above the Pistons in the story that ESPN did, which I agree with as well. They're gonna be really tough next season.
And just to put some actual numbers to this, so Ricochet to end last year, I'll pull his month of March because it was real strong. 16 points, 4 rebounds, 1 assist. He was shooting over 50% from the floor and almost 40% from 3. And then our forgotten man, Jalen Johnson, it was 19 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists, 50% from the floor. I mean, come on. Like, yeah, they're going to be good. The Hawks are going to be good as long as everyone can stay healthy. They're league pass team for me, for sure.
Yeah, and I also want to point out they're the team that the Pelicans traded that unprotected first to, right? For Derek Queen. So
I think so. Yeah, so they're just going to keep getting better.
Yeah, so depending on what happens from there, and they traded down. Now that I'm looking it up, they get Asa Newell out of Georgia, who could be an interesting piece for them in the long term, but they could potentially have a top 5 pick next year. Who knows what's going to happen with that draft? We're nowhere close to that yet. There are some interesting players at the top, but yeah, that's a scary thing to think about.
The other thing, sorry, this is the last Atlanta Hawks thing, and then we're going to move on because this is not an Atlanta Hawks podcast, but it's just incredible to me, the Trae Young situation as well. Like the parallel for Pistons fans would be kind of like if you had this young core right now in Detroit minus Cade Cunningham, but you had Blake Griffin in his all NBA third team season, and you were thinking about like not extending him. Maybe you trade him away. So like you'd be trading away a guy that is an all NBA type player, and you already have a really good crop of young, talented pieces around that you could then turn that all NBA guy into more or picks or a mix or someone else that fits in a different way. Like it's almost an embarrassment of riches to be having that conversation with Trae Young because he fits the roster as is right now. He's an all-star. He's a great player. And if they move on from him, it's not like, when the Pistons moved on from Andre Drummond, like they've already got the Hawks, a team that you look at it, you could say, yeah, that's going to be maybe a 50-plus win team if things go their way. And maybe they move on from their star. Like, oh, it's wild. That's great.
It's almost like we talked about football, like a football analogy when the Cowboys traded Micah Parsons to the Packers and Jerry Jones was like, who's to say we can't use these draft picks we got to go and get another player? And it's like, isn't the player you would look to go and trade for Micah Parsons? Like that's kind of Atlanta's Trae Young situation with me. Like who they seem to be on the path to contend sooner rather than later. So who are you going to bring in other than Trae Young to help with that? I mean, in the NBA, stars get unhappy all the time and things happen and people become available, but it's like just just keep him and see what happens, at least for now that you made all these good moves over the offseason.
Pistons fans, just take solace in the fact that Cade is better than Trey. In fact, Cade Cunningham's the best point guard in the Eastern Conference.
And we have
I
all of
don't
our
care,
draft
Knicks
picks
fans.
too.
Yeah, and we have all the draft picks. That's right. Let's do the ceiling and floor stuff, okay? So we're going to go through 5 players, all of those young players. And in fact, let's just start with Cade Cunningham because I brought up his name. But give me a stat line prediction for what you think his ceiling is. We'll go one at a time. So you'll give the ceiling, I'll give the ceiling, and then we'll both do the floor after that. Cade Cunningham, what's the absolute best you could envision?
And are we going points, assists, rebounds, like keeping it to that?
Yeah. And
Okay.
if you want to add in like stocks or like a 3-point percentage, you feel free.
Okay. Well, so points, he averaged 20, just above 26 points a game last season. Honestly, I don't think the ceiling would be too much more over that. I'd put it somewhere around 28 points a game, and that puts him up with all the stars in the NBA. The only people that averaged 28 or more points a game last year were Nikola Jokic, Giannis, and Shea. So that's Anthony Edwards was just below that at 27.6. But I almost don't think that ceiling is going to be too high because I see him, growing more as a playmaker. He already averaged 9 assists last year. I see that going up to, or as a ceiling, around 10, which is another crazy stat total. Like the only people that averaged 10 assists last year were Trae Young and Jokic. So that would be a crazy total. And rebounds, he averaged 6 last year. I could see that ceiling right around 7. I don't think he's going to get much more than that. But still, he's a great rebounder as a guard, has that size. So in short, 28, 10, and 7, which is just crazy numbers.
Blake, you literally stole the ceiling that I was going to give. That is hilarious. We're way too similar on that. I had it written down over here. It's 28 points, 10 assists, 7 rebounds. I think he gets those 28 points by improving the free throw rate. We saw that already down the back half of last season. We saw that in the playoffs. I think he figured it out. I think he figured out how to generate those calls. And I think as well, we forget, or at least I forget, that right after that Knicks series, the big takeaway for us, and actually we know for Trajan Langdon and JB Bickerstaff, because they said as much in postseason press conferences, was Cade's conditioning. They don't want to lower his minutes. They want to keep him at about where his minutes were, which were right at that 36 number, close to it, which is on par for superstars. But I think that the conditioning work that Cade likely did over this offseason not only is going to help him with drawing fouls because his core will be a little bit stronger. He can kind of control the body a little bit more and bounce off guys a little bit more and just generate the whistle. I think that 3-point percentage is not going to drop like it did after February last year. I just don't. I think I'm bought in. So I think that's how he gets there. And I'm probably more confident actually in the points total of that ceiling than the assists because, like you said, getting 10 assists is really, really hard. That said, if someone's going to do it, I could see it being Cade Cunningham this year. So if you wanted, I get here to be different, a more reasonable ceiling. Let's go 29, 9, and 6. So I'll tone down the rebounds and assist numbers from what you gave, and then I'll even inflate the points total just a little bit more, and I'll say that that's my ceiling.
Yeah, and I think the point about free throws is a good one. Like that's how he raises it. If you look at the top 10 scorers in the NBA last year, Cade has the lowest amount of free throw attempts per game of all of them. He was at 5.3 last year. The next lowest in that top 10 range is Kevin Durant, who attempted 5.8 per game. So not a crazy difference, but if Cade can get somewhere around 6 attempts a game, I mean that really raises that ceiling as well. He's a good free throw shooter, especially when you compare him to that bunch overall. And I think he has the ability to grow there, even if you take all the just his growth as a player out of the equation and everything. Just growing in this league, getting more respect, being an all NBA guy, he's going to get a better whistle, which is maybe not how we want it to see him play, but it is an area of his game where you could almost see that improvement happening more realistically.
I'm sorry, I just got distracted looking at the fact that Cade's only 23 years old still, and that's just ceiling is unreal for him. So here's a fun question before we do the floor. Is he a legit MVP candidate? Right. So this is from Caleb Lanus. Says, do you guys think that Cade will continue his ascent to stardom this season and possibly even be a legit MVP candidate? So I'm going to kind of rephrase this a little bit for the conversation we just had. If he's hitting somewhere near that ceiling that you and I just laid out, is he a legit MVP candidate?
I think it depends on how the team does, honestly, whether we like it or not. The being on a contender it matters with that award. The top five last year were Shea, Jokic, Giannis, Tatum, and Donovan Mitchell. Cade was actually right behind that with LeBron, Cade, and Ant Edwards. So, I mean, overall, he's putting it, especially if he gets to the ceiling we're talking about, those are MVP numbers. It's just, where is the team? If they overachieve and they're a second or third seed, I think he would certainly be in that top five conversation. But overall, when you have guys like Jokic averaging a triple-double, Shea doing what he does as a scorer, and like Giannis averaged 30 points a game, I think it would be really hard to jump over those guys. But who's to say it's not possible? And I mean, he could certainly get in that and get some more votes. He already got some votes last year, which was awesome to see. But Chad's talking about my posters in the background. Yeah, I do need to fix them.
A little crooked, man. I mean, I could see it now too.
The ceiling.
You need a level. Can I send you a level?
One of them is crooked. I need to fix that. Thank you for pointing it out. The ceiling's also a little like uneven in my house for some reason, but yeah, sorry about that. But overall, I think Cade could definitely be in top five for voting, which puts him in first team All NBA territory. I just think the top of the top in this league will be so hard to overtake. If voters didn't have voting fatigue with Jokic, like I probably would have voted for Nikola Jokic last year. But overall, Cade's numbers would put him in that group.
Here's all I'll say. If Cade improves statistically on the year he had last year, and the Pistons win more than 47 games, I think he's getting votes. I don't think that that's a legit MVP candidate unless somehow he's like averaging a triple-double and you're having the Russell Westbrook conversation, right? But I think that there's votes, and like Sports Time said, let's see if I could find it. Yeah. Second team All NBA. I mean, I thought he should have been second team All NBA last year, but that was more to do with some injuries that were out there. I think that now, if he can pull that off, it's a legit second team All NBA. All right, let's go through this quickly. All right, what's his floor?
This is a tough one because obviously the Pistons' success relies on Cade Cunningham. I don't see a world where he's not averaging 25 points a game. If that is not the case, I think that assist number goes up. But just to make it clean, let's say 24, 8, and 5, which is still really good. But it is a little bit of a step back for Cade Cunningham. And again, if he's averaging 24 points a game, I think he's averaging 9 or more assists per game. But just to keep it all floor and even, I would put it somewhere in that realm.
Yeah, I just think his floor is exactly what he did last year. It just looked so repeatable for him. And two, I mean, there's reasonable conversation on like, well, Jaden Ivey's back, so you got more shots that are going to be potentially taken away from Cade and given to Ivey. And at first, I would say, I mean, you don't really want to take shots away from Cade Cunningham at this point, so that's one. But two, he also shot 47% from the floor last year. If he could improve his finishing around the rim a little bit, he can get that percentage up, even just 1 or 2 percentage points. And he's getting to the line more, and he's shooting a good percentage at the free throw line, and his 3-point percentage doesn't drop off as the season progresses. I mean, you could make the argument that he could lose on average 2 to 3 shots per game and still average about the same points, rebounds, and assists, right? So I think his floor is exactly what he did last year. Let's do Jaden Ivey next. I think this should be a fun one since we didn't get too much of Jaden Ivey last year. So let me read off what he averaged last season. He was 17.6 points, 4.1 rebounds, and 4 assists. What is Jaden Ivey's ceiling this season?
I mean, I think a realistic expectation for Jaden Ivey, if he's going to continue to improve and not a huge sample size from last year, I think it's right around, as a scorer, 20 points per game. So I'd put his ceiling even a bit higher than that. Let's say around 21 assists. I don't see it. We'll see what happens with the second unit. Like, he is expected to take backup point guard responsibilities. So that'll help him there a little bit, but I don't see that number growing a ton. So I'd say 21 points a game, around 4.5 assists and rebounds. I mean, I don't think you need to talk about Jaden Ivey getting too many more rebounds per game. So I think 4 right around there is like what you could expect from him. I think overall where you'd see his ceiling grow is as a scorer.
Yeah, I'm going to call my shot. I know I said this last offseason too, but I'm going to stick by it. I think he gets over 20 points per game this season. So with that being said, like, if I were to give what I think Jaden Ivey's stat line is actually going to be, I would say 20 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists again. So as an absolute ceiling, let's go like 22, 5 and 5. Like, I could, that would be a lot. All right. That'd be a big leap out of Jaden Ivey. I think that would require, even getting to 20 points per game, that would require him looking for his own shot in a way that I don't think we have actually seen him do yet in his career with the Detroit Pistons. However, it's reachable for him. The way he can create for himself off the dribble, out of a standstill, the way he can attack in transition, out of pick and roll. I think he's still got the fastest first step on the team, even with Asar Thompson around. And we've been talking all offseason about this idea that you could kind of use him as a movement piece off ball. And there's a lot of potential with that, even if he's not necessarily a movement shooter. I could just see him really being that focal point outside of Cade Cunningham that helps keep that offense going. Again, like, I know it's a big leap, but as a big time ceiling, as Jaden Ivey establishing that he's really that second star that this Pistons team needs, I could see 22, 5 and 5, and it wouldn't be ridiculous.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm right there with you. I think that threshold we want to see Ivy at is right around 20 points a game, and Chad gave it a guaranteed. So I love that. I mean, I think that who knows what Ivy will look like when he comes back. I mean, we don't think there's going to be anything wrong with recovery or anything like that. Like, he should be coming
no ligament damage, I think, right?
Yeah, it was clean from everything that we know.
quote clean.
Yeah, as clean as that injury could be. But I think that's what we would have wanted to see from Ivy even last year, and his season gets cut drastically short. We haven't seen him really play with Asar Thompson much at all. So I think 20 a game is where you want him to see. So if we're talking actual ceiling, I'm with you. It's right above that.
All right, what's the floor? I think this one's actually really interesting because it kind of, I don't know, the range that we could establish here probably says quite a bit about how each of us view Jaden Ivey, the player, and maybe even, you know, where his future lies, if in Detroit or elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't take his scoring floor super low because I think as long as Ivy has the role on this team that we have seen him operate in, and we know he's going to come back and operate in that same way, I think you need to get 15, 16 points a game out of that player at least. He was at 17.5 last year, so it's not a crazy drop off by any means. So I'd put that floor right around 16 assists, 4 assists a game as your secondary playmaker and a guy who is going to be taking some on-ball reps with the second unit. Like Dennis Schroeder averaged 5.3 assists per game for the Pistons when he was with the team last year. So you shouldn't see Ivy's numbers drop a ton, but if they did, I couldn't even see them getting all the way down to 3. I think it would be somewhere in 3.5, and similar thing with rebounds. I mean, average 4 a game last year. I would honestly just keep the floor right at that 4 number.
Yeah. So rebounds and assists, I'm right there with you. I don't really want to change that at all when we're talking about the floor here. But with the points total, it's kind of interesting. So the leap that Jaden Ivey took from, you know, about 15 points per game to 17.5. So because last season it was 17.6. It was really driven a lot by that 3-point percentage.
Mm-hmm.
He went from, I'm looking at it right now, he went from 33% to about 41% on roughly the same volume. I mean, that alone accounts for nearly half of that point increase that he had. And if you look at his field goal attempts, it really only went up 1. He only shot 1 additional shot per game as compared to the year prior. So I say all this to say, like, when you're looking at a floor, I think for what Jaden Ivey could put up next season, if there are fewer shots to go around, which is possible, you know, we're talking about, we'll get to Asar Thompson in a second, but maybe you want to allocate some more shots to him. Maybe Ron Holland is going to demand more attention offensively, right? It's possible that the shots go down. And if that 3-point percentage dips back under league average, comes back under, you know, 36%, you really could be looking at 14 and 15 points per game. I'm not saying I think that's a likely floor. I'm comparatively more confident in Jaden Ivey's ceiling than floor. I mean, I said it right at the top of this conversation. If I were to give a prediction of what I legitimately think he's going to do this year, it's about 24-4. I think he's scoring 20 points per game this season. But if we're talking an absolute worst case scenario floor situation where you're pretty confident that no, he's not going to get extended, you're starting to talk about trades and all that stuff, you know, 14-ish points per game is reasonable. Like, you could envision it, even though it's not fun.
Yeah, and let's say what we don't know about that is you add in Duncan Robinson and Karis LeVert. We don't know what their volumes are going to look like. Malik Beasley took over 9 threes a game last year. Tim Hardaway took almost 6. So that's just above 15 3-point attempts. That, like, are Duncan Robinson and Karis LeVert going to get all of those? maybe, maybe not. And some of those could go to Jaden Ivey, and Malik Beasley didn't always play next to Jaden Ivey and everything like that. But there is a lot of volume that we're not sure how it's going to shake out with this new roster. Jaden Ivey's primary role isn't going to be as a floor spacer, so I'm not expecting him to go from 5 3-point attempts per game to 7 or something like that. But even if he just gets a little bit more volume, that could help with any variance, I guess, when we're talking about a floor.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chad brings up a good point here in our live chat, says that this is an information gathering season again. They need him to get shots. Levert or Robinson taking all those shots tells us nothing. It's a good point to bring back up, right? You want to figure out what Ivy can do this year. I think they will. And so, yeah, I'm right there with you. Like I would want a good portion of those all going to Jaden Ivey. And just shout out to the profile pick change as well. I thought the other one looked pretty good, Chad, but this one's also pretty sharp. Let's talk about Asar Thompson, the man that, according to Sports Time, and I saw this too, but I just wanted to pull up the comment, that Zach Lowe has said is the most obvious, most improved player candidate here. So that is Asar Thompson. Last season, he averaged in 59 games, 10.1 points, 5.1 rebounds, and 2.3 assists. He shot almost 54% from the floor, 22% from three, and 64% from the free throw line. I bring that up because we are certainly going to be talking about his ability to score. So those are important context. What is Asar Thompson's ceiling this year?
All right.
And is it actually reasonable to have him as a most improved candidate, or like a high likelihood of a most improved candidate?
So for context, we talked about Dyson Daniels, last year's most improved player. He averaged 14 points a game, nearly 6 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 3 steals a game, like emphasis on 3 steals a game, 0.7 blocks. So Asar, and I don't think his role is ever going to be a primary scorer, but you want to see him at least figure it out to a degree on how he can contribute to the offense in an impactful manner. And he did that at some points last season. Sometimes we were searching for more, but 10 points a game, I don't think he's going to drastically improve that. But if I had to put a ceiling on it, I'd honestly put it right around that 14 number. 5 assists a game, I think, 5 rebounds a game. I think he could increase from that as well to be right around 6 assists, 2.3. He's a better playmaker than that. Those numbers reflect, but it's like, how many on-ball reps is he going to get? How many of those opportunities is he going to have? So I'd put that ceiling, maybe increasing that 1, so right around 3.5. And then steals and blocks, he averaged 1.7 steals a game last year, 0.7 blocks. I think he could get that steal number up to, like, realistically, I'd say 2 and 1, which I think is what you brought up a few shows ago, Wes, when we were talking about how to improve those numbers. But if we're going absolute ceiling, maybe 2.5 steals a game, 1 block a game, which I think those numbers, so 14, 6, 3, and then 2.5 and 1, that puts him right near what Dyson Daniels did last year. I mean, he had more steals and he averaged almost 4.5 assists per game. I just don't know if Asar Thompson is going to have all those opportunities. So it would make sense. And I also think Daniels was given this award to a degree of, like, yes, he was certainly one of the most improved players, but it was like, he's not getting Defensive Player of the Year, and this guy deserves an award. I think Asar Thompson almost fits that bill to a degree. So I wouldn't be shocked if he was in that most improved category. We don't know what other players are going to do, who's going to be up in that for that award as well. But if you're just comparing those numbers, I think he could certainly get there.
Here's the big deal for Asar Thompson. It's all about that field goal percentage. If he can get that up to like close to 60, given the position that he plays, the fact that you're looking at him this year as being a bit of a combo forward, I don't think asking him to shoot better than 60% from the floor is reasonable. But if he could get close, we're talking 57, 58, then I'm right there with you. Somewhere at like 14 points per game would be my ceiling. I think he could do that on about the same volume, just being more efficient. Asar Thompson's sneaky, okay? He needs to be a better finisher at the rim. He's not been a great finisher at the rim, despite all of the athletic gifts. So that's like item number one for me. If he's going to hit a ceiling, he's a better finisher around the basket. And you see that field goal percentage leap up to 57, 58, 14 points per game. That's legit. I'm there with you on assists and on the stocks. I would have said the same for both of those, somewhere, 3 to 4 assists, and then out 3.5 stocks is insane, but as a ceiling, yeah, he could do that. You can imagine it, which even at face value is ridiculous to say, but it's true. You can. I'm really high on his ability to get rebounds, though. I think that's something that he did better in the playoffs, and I'd like to continue to see that trending upwards. He's just so dang talented in transition. And the great perk with guard rebounds are that they can grab and go, right? Well, Asar Thompson, he can, to an extent, handle it and pass it almost like a guard, even though he's a forward. So even if he's playing the 4 for some bench minutes, like grab and go, man, like I would love to see him start to leverage that more. I think actually we said it last week, right? Like the idea of him and Jaden Ivey playing a 2-man game in transition, running the wings, like that should be frightening to defenses. And I think we're going to see it a lot this year. So all of this is to say my ceiling for Asar Thompson, 14 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, and 3.5 stocks. And I think 8 is on the high end, but if I put it at 7, I would be ridiculously confident that he's going to get there to it.
Yeah, I agree with you overall. I mean, I do think he has more rebounding upside than maybe he gets credit for. I just really think the swing for him, if he's going to be this most interesting player across the league, most improved candidate that Zach Lowe is saying, I think it all depends on how he's going to put the ball in the hoop, which I think has always been the question. We talked about last week with the 3-point percentage. We're not confident that he's going to magically go up from the dreadful percentage he was at, and he'll probably never grow into that type of player, which is okay. It's just, how are you going to find opportunities to score outside of that? I think it'll be tougher when you're almost ignored on the 3-point line, but I think he's that gifted of an athlete and a good off-ball mover where he could find more scoring opportunities during the game. And honestly, the offense should have a priority in creating those for him.
All right, let's do this quickly. What do you think his floor is? And then we're going to close out talking Jalen Duren.
Man, I do not want to see Asar Thompson under 10 points a game, which is what he was basically at last year. So I'm going to keep that floor right where he was last year, scoring wise, 10 points a game. I feel like it's a bit of a cop out to say his floor is what he did last year, but that's really where I see it. I don't see him like shrinking from those numbers a ton. The only way I can see it, I guess, is if he isn't putting up these stock numbers that we think he is. And if he's not doing that, I think it's more of a game plan, like him getting switched off the ball and a lot opponents trying to take him out of defensive actions. But I don't think, even if that's the case, I think he's still going to make an impact on defense. So just to make it even, my floor for him would be 10 points a game, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and 1.5 blocks, 0.5, or I'm sorry, 1.5 steals and 0.5 blocks. So that's right around where he was last year, just a little step below.
So here's how unreasonably high I am on Asar Thompson this season. To me, his floor is better than what he was last year still. I'd have him at like 12 points per game, and that's only a modest improvement from, assuming a modest improvement from the floor. So thinking maybe like 55 instead of 53% that he was at last year. So 12 points per game, let's call it 6 assists and maybe 6 rebounds, 3 assists, and just, only 2.5 stocks per game. So Sean Haddock says he would bet his house that Asar averages over 10 points per game. Yeah, man, me too. Yeah. And over 2.5 stocks per game as well. I'm just really high on the type of player he can be. So let's get this in quickly. All right. Cause I want to make sure that we get to the big man here before we close out the show. Jalen Duren, what's his ceiling?
Okay, so Jalen Duren last year averaged 11.8 points per game, 10.3 rebounds, 1.1 blocks, 0.7 steals. I don't think you're going to see him go up from those numbers a ton. But if he is getting more field goal attempts, he averaged 7 attempts per game last year. If he goes slightly above that, I could see him as a scorer being right around that 13 number, which is a lot for a player in his role. And we're seeing, like, I'm more confident in the ceiling for Cade and Ivy and even Asar leaping than I am Jalen Duren. Like, I think what he did might just be the type of player that he is. We know he's a good passing big man, so maybe he does bump those numbers up a bit. But again, how many opportunities are those? So if I had to go with a ceiling for him, it would be right around 13 and let's say 11 rebounds per game, which would put him right near the top of the league, which is still, and he was there last year. So it's doable. And then maybe like somewhere between 2.5 and 3 assists per game.
Yeah, this won't be surprising, but the big thing for me is the stocks. 1.7 out of your center, not great, or 1.8, sorry, out of your center is not wonderful. That's not great. And I really think Isaiah Stewart's going to play more minutes this year. And he's not going to be a 4. They killed that. We saw plenty a couple years ago why that's not really a great idea. He's not a 4. He can't put the ball on the floor. He can't play make for others. Really. He's a great, Isaiah Stewart is a great backup center, but he's not much more. I really do believe that he is going to play more minutes. It's going to be somewhere closer to an even split. Like, you got to understand, for Jalen Duren to get more minutes this year so that this volume can go up, right? And he can make improvements statistically on his points, rebounds, assists, all that stuff. He'd have to get closer to 30 minutes a game. I just don't see a world where that's happening. I could see his minutes actually going down through no fault of his own. And, that's just kind of what it is. So with all of that being said, because I just want to make sure, like, that's the context that I'm coming from. All right. I think what he did last year with a modest improvement to rebounds and stocks is his ceiling. I think if you're looking at 12, around 3 assists, and then if he could be at 2 stocks per game, which is an improvement. And now we're talking like, maybe it's like 1.5 blocks and a half steal, something around that. Like, great. That would be awesome. For one, because I'm assuming he's doing this in less minutes. So you're still talking about ridiculous efficiency and probably improvement as a defensive rebounder, which this team could use. That's kind of where I see the ceiling, though. And, probably like 26 minutes a night again.
Yeah. And also, if we're talking about ceilings and floors, maybe it's another way to become more efficient, I guess. And he was
Yeah,
efficient last. I don't want to say that.
almost 70% from the floor.
Right.
Is 69.2, which is insane.
He also averaged 1.7 turnovers per game. And yes, I
Yep.
know he's only 21 years old and everything like that. But if we can get that down too, that would be huge as well. And I know turnovers are going to happen. It's a big conversation with Cade Cunningham and really any on-ball guard. But when you're having almost 2 turnovers a game from your starting center, like you just want to limit that. So if he gets that down somewhere around 1, like Isaiah Stewart in less minutes, for context, average just under 1. Would want to see him a little bit less than that too, but that would be a big win as well for Jalen Duren as well as the entire team.
Yeah, and the thing with like centers playmaking, just in general, right, taking outside of the context of the Pistons, is like for a center to be getting a good chunk of assists or to really improve as a playmaker for others, that means you have to take the ball out of your guards and forwards' hands in order to have the center start to do that. And we're really getting to the point, I think, with this roster where you need to legitimately have that conversation. Like Jalen Duren is a good short roll passer. He's shown some flashes as a high post passer as well. We saw that in the playoffs with him and Asar Thompson, with Asar cutting along the baseline. But in order to really mine that skill, we're talking about taking the ball out of Asar Thompson's hands. We're talking about taking the ball out of Jaden Ivey's hands to an extent, not necessarily Cade, but a little bit. You signed Karis LeVert to be kind of a combo guard. Well, you know, that's not great either if you really want to start mining the skill for your big men. And we haven't even brought up the idea of Ron Holland yet, who we're not going to get to today, but presumably that's someone you would want to see what can he do with the ball in his hands as well. So I think with the playmaking, I could see that taking a step back, even if the skill improves. Like I could see him being at 2.5 assists per game, and he was at 2.7 last year, Jalen Duren. And if the turnovers are down under 1, I think you could very confidently say Jalen Duren is a better passer this year than he was last year. It's just you wonder if the opportunity is really going to be there, because at this point you have to start asking if it's worth generating the opportunities with the roster that the Pistons have right now.
Yeah, especially when you have a guy like Cade Cunningham that we're talking about could be in that 10 assists per game range, which not many teams have that player in the league. So how much of it will there be to go around? I mean, I think it's definitely an added benefit that Jalen Duren, we do have confidence in him to do it. It's just like, will he have those opportunities? And I almost think you don't want him to have a ton, but as a guy who can keep the offense moving, it definitely helps. And like, I love that ability. It's fun to watch Jalen Duren pass. It's just like, don't turn the ball over.
Yeah. 2 things before we move on to the floor, and then let's close out the show. I would what I would really like to see more of in terms of playmaking with Jalen Duren? Kickouts. He's a fantastic offensive rebounder. It seems like the majority of those offensive rebounds, when he gets them, they're either going back up, which is great. He shoots almost 70% from the floor, so I am not complaining about that. But if I'm going to nitpick something, it's the kickout choices that he makes. I think that he could improve in that skill. Look specifically for a Duncan Robinson, for maybe a Karis LeVert or a Jaden Ivey if they're stationary. Maybe Asar has shown to be a pretty adept cutter. We've seen Jaden Ivey do that as well. I think Karis LeVert is severely underrated as a cutter when the Pistons made that signing too. So there should be movement. There should be options for when Jalen Duren getting an offensive rebounder, which we know he's going to get a ton of, to immediately generate points that aren't him as well. Because when he gets those rebounds, you know that the defense is collapsing pretty hard. So if he could be more intentional with his kickouts after an offensive rebound where his shot's taken away, I think that playmaking would be a huge win. And that's as Sean Haddock says, a leap in passing. It absolutely would be for JD. And then I just want to make clear, because I felt like, I was saying some low numbers as the ceiling, and I kind of felt bad about it. Just to put this into context, if you have a guy that is in 26 minutes per game, averaging 12 points, 12 rebounds, 2 stocks, 2.5 assists, and shooting nearly 70% from the floor, that is a really freaking good starting center in the NBA.
Yeah.
In low volume, that's the type of center where you're putting them out there and you don't think about it. You just know you're going to get solid production. Any team that doesn't have a Jokic or to an extent an Embiid when they're healthy would kill to have that kind of guy. So I think that the ceiling is really high. It's just I don't think the numbers are going to be really high. So I want to make that clear. And I'll let you respond, and then let's do the floor for JD here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like not every player is going to average 15, 20 points a game. You have to. Jalen Duren is a huge piece of this team, even if the numbers aren't crazy. And I honestly think his numbers are a little bit crazy. Like he was up near the top of the NBA as a rebounder, averaging almost 70% from the field. So, I mean, I'll just jump into the floor. I don't see his floor very much lower than what he did last year, which was almost 12 points a game, just over 10 rebounds a game. And I don't think that Jalen Duren is suddenly going to regress to be averaging right near 10 points a game with how effective he is near the rim and how this team will use him as a roller, as a lob threat, everything like that, everything we know he's going to do. So honestly, I would put it right at 11, 10. We know he's going to get his rebounds, even if his minutes go down. And then steals and blocks and assists, I'd sort of just keep where they were. So that's like 2.5 assists, 0.7 steals, 1.1 blocks per game. So right near or right below 2 stocks a game. Honestly, I still see that as the floor.
I can see the points dipping down. I mean, 69% from the floor is one heck of an outlier season.
Yeah.
I think he can replicate that because of what his shot diet is and because of the playmakers he has around him. So I'm not in any way expecting the field goal percentage to dip down to say, closer to 60, maybe under 65. But 69 is an outlier here. So if it does regress back to maybe the usual for a starting center in the NBA, so closer to 60, and we're still talking about maybe around 26 minutes a night, and shot attempts aren't as plentiful because maybe Ivy's taking more, and maybe Ron Holland and Asar Thompson also are taking a few more looks every night. Yeah, I could see like 9.5 points per game. But in terms of variance, there's not really much there with the rebounds or the assist numbers at the same token. Like he's going to be over 10 rebounds a night. I think he's going to be over 2.5 assists a night. And then the only question you have left is, how low do the stocks go? We've seen him at well under 1.5 a game in the past. If we start to regress closer to that, I suppose it's possible, right? Any player could take a step back. Again, I don't think that these are likely. We could see that happening. So as a floor, let's say maybe like 8.5 points, 10 rebounds, 2.5 assists, and 1.3 stocks. And that would be a bad year. It would. That would be a bad year. I'm more confident in the ceiling. I'll let you do this too. I think if I had to make like a legitimate prediction, because we did this with Jaden Ivey, so let's do it with Jalen Duren as well. If I made a legitimate prediction about what I think he's going to do this year, I would say 10.5 points, 12 rebounds, 3 assists, and approaching 2 stocks. So somewhere still in that range that he was last year, 1.8 to 2. I think that's that's repeatable out of him. That would be my guess of what he was going to put up this year. What about you?
Yeah, I think I'd give him like 12 points a game, 10 rebounds, 3 assists. And I really think he can get his block numbers up a bit. So still right around 2, but maybe 1.5 blocks a game, somewhere near a steal a game. I mean, that's asking a lot, definitely. But I think how athletic he is, how effective he's been, like on the offensive side of the ball, I could definitely see it. So overall, that's where I'd see it. But with that, it's like where else is it? Is it less minutes for Isaiah Stewart? Like, what does that mean in the grand scheme of things? But I think overall, like we were talking about information gathering, Jalen Duren it's a big year for the team with him and Jaden Ivey as well. So I think you're going to see more of him, and it's just how will it work out? And I don't see any reason if he's playing in a similar role, like why his numbers would take a massive hit or anything like that.
All right, so I think we got to call it there, guys. We didn't even get to Ron Holland. We're already over. We're an hour 15. So this is already a longer show. I was going to say, yeah, we could probably get another episode out of this because, I mean, Lord knows we talked about Isaiah Stewart enough today to maybe do a high-low or a floor ceiling for him as well. And we haven't even hit on any of the vets either. Tobias Harris is going to have a big role. Karis LeVert, Duncan Robinson. Like there's plenty here. So maybe next week we keep this train rolling a little bit. But in any sense, I think this was a lot of fun. I like doing these high-lows for guys just because when you kind of get that range, I feel like that's a better expression of where each of us have our expectations of these guys coming into the year, rather than just saying, yeah, I think Jaden Ivey's going to average 20 points a night, right? Like there's a little bit more color here to say, he could be up to 22, and if a lot of things go wrong, maybe we're looking at 14 to 15 again, right? There's more that we can kind of dive into with that. So I have fun with these. I hope all, you guys listening, you guys enjoyed this as well. And I think Blake will close it out.
Yeah, we'll definitely spend some more time on some of the other guys we didn't get to. Shout out to everyone for joining in the chat, or if you're listening after we're recording here. Reminder, anyone can call our phone line to ask a question and hear your voice on the show. The number for that is 313-355-2717. And special thanks to Sean Corp, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, for supporting the show. And shout out to you guys again for all the great questions and talking points tonight. We'll catch you next week, whether on your commute or live with us on YouTube. We can't wait to talk more Detroit basketball with you all.